Uh, Good evening to all of you. I'm Suhas, Borker, Mediaperson, documentary filmmaker, activist, and a trustee of IIC, and the moderator of today's discussion. And I welcome you all on behalf of Sugata Srinivasaraju and Penguin Random House, India, ladies and gentlemen, and fellow members of IIC, to the discussion on imagining the nation today, the politics and predicaments. Before the discussion, we shall launch Sugata Srinivasaraju's new book, Strange Burdens, The Politics and Predicaments of Rahul Gandhi, published by Penguin Random House, India. I could not say welcome on behalf of India International Center, because there hangs a tale to which I shall come later. The discussion on imagining the nation today, the politics and predicaments, shall of course be in the context of Sugata's latest book, but seen on a larger canvas of national developments and what has happened in the recent past and what is happening to our country right now, to the polity, to the edifice of parliamentary democracy, to federalism, the idea of India, and the humongous difficulties faced by our people, the problems and the burning issues they are facing. We have a distinguished panel of speakers with us here. At the far end is Professor, Department of Hindi, Delhi University, Apoorvanand. Please welcome him. At the end was to be our senior journalist and columnist, Urmilesh. But unfortunately, or for whatever reason, he was picked up in the morning by cops, and he's just been released and he's trying to make it. But he said he's, not shaken, but he's it'll take a while to come, so he's 7:30, I think he'll make it. Let's see if he can, because he's very disturbed. Okay. Then we have rights activist and former member of the Planning Commission, Saiyidain Hameed. Former External Affairs Minister Salman Khurshid, we just got a call, he's about to join us. Former Chief Minister of Maharashtra, Prithviraj Chavan, welcome him. Author and journalist Sugata is here, the author of the book. Sir William Mark Tully was to grace the occasion. He was keen to do that, but he was taken unwell, hospitalized, and we are very sorry that he could not make it today. Now to some housekeeping for today's discussion. We start now. Each speaker gets 10 minutes, and we have 6 speakers. Two will be, of course, joining us, and the moderator, which takes us past 7:40, and this is followed by Q&A, and we close at 8. The panelists are requested to strictly keep to the time allotted to them, that is 10 minutes. The discussion is being webcast live on the YouTube channel, CFTV News Reports. And that's it. So now we begin, and I would like Sugata to open the, we have to launch the book first. So here we go. Huh?
When they come.
No, I think let's do it now. Yeah, because there'll be no time then. You have the floor. Yeah, fine.
I've come with a prepared thing so that I don't exceed the stipulated time. So I'm truly honored and absolutely privileged to be in the company of such eminent panel and an absolutely splendid and very learned audience here today. We had a great launch a fortnight ago in Bangalore, my home city. And the panel there was led by Professor G.N. Devi. And like in Bangalore, we have here today a very diverse and bipartisan audience. We have people from across party and ideological affiliations, as well as a broad spectrum of intellectual traditions. I'm grateful to everybody here on behalf of my publisher, Penguin Random House, and myself. And I'm greatly indebted to Mr. Suhas Borker, the trustee of IIC. He has had to go through a lot in the last few days, for coming up with the idea of this book discussion and launch. A common link between us has been our gentle and very generous mentor, H.Y. Sharda Prasad. So I will speak for a few minutes on my book's protagonist, that is Rahul Gandhi, and then conclude by reading a tiny passage from the book, which directly relates to the theme of today's discussion. I won't take more than my stipulated time, as I said, because I'm also, like all of you, very keen and anxious to listen to the speakers here. So there is no greater joy for an author when his subject or his protagonist starts living the book. It is almost like the absurd reality that the late 19th and early 20th century Italian writer Luigi Pirandello constructed. 2 days ago, in the Sunday edition of a newspaper, Rahul Gandhi had written a short piece. It almost read like a spiritual discourse, a sermon, and it was being published in peak election season. He was indirectly addressing a larger theme that concerns our polity today, about Hindu religion and its exclusive and narrow interpretation. Through the metaphor of an ocean, he spoke about how his religion was not about victimhood, fear, false celebration, or hatred, but about reflective personal transformation for greater and collective good. He used the words loss, death, courage, anger, hatred, anxiety, love, compassion, and respect in that short piece to present his alternative belief system and worldview. We are all swimming and drowning in exactly the same waters, he wrote in what came across as a solemn yet somber voice. There were no specifics or the directness of an op-ed piece in what he wrote, but it was filled with a certain universality. There was no urgency to win an election, but a larger patience to transform society the way we see things and embrace the world. He was responding to his political opponents in the most unusual, esoteric, and eclectic fashion. One would have expected him to say something about Rajasthan, Chhattisgarh, Madhya Pradesh, and Telangana, or about the eventualities of 2024, or about the federal or social justice agendas that he has come to speak about recently. However, he chose to stay away from the nuts and bolts of politics. Just sample these unhurried, tranquil lines he wrote, far, far away from the exigencies and tempestuousness of Indian politics. I quote, "A Hindu knows that whatever knowledge exists springs from the collective will of the ocean. It is not her property alone. She knows things are constantly evolving in the currents and that nothing ever stands still. She is bestowed with a sense of curiosity, one that ensures she never closes her mind to understanding. A Hindu is humble and is always ready to listen and learn from any being that swims in the great ocean." As I read these lines, I felt validated about a lot of things that I speak about in the book, Strange Burdens, in my endeavor to understand him, especially in the first, third, fourth, ninth, and the final chapters of the book. As a contrast to this calm and slowness that Rahul Gandhi exhibited, the protagonist of my previous book, former Prime Minister H.D. Deve Gowda, had given a sharp, long interview in the same edition of the newspaper and only a page apart, and he did not waste a single syllable in avenging his humiliations. He was fighting at 92 to survive. Now, In between the interview of H.D. Devegowda and the piece by Rahul Gandhi lie the extremes, not of any ideology, but pragmatism and idealism. These two communications in the newspaper could be read as an exchange between the two positions. Pragmatism understands the limits of idealism, but idealism does not always acknowledge pragmatism. Anyway, for the author, two of his protagonists, two of his book subjects were somewhat living the book he had written, the lives he had interpreted. That is the singular joy of a writer. Let me return to Strange Burdens. Ever since the book has hit the stands, and even before it could hit the stands, I've been asked two questions. Why did you write this book now? Or why did you write this book? I could smell anxiety, affection, prejudice, presumption, cynicism, and dismissal in the questions. If the ones who loved Rahul Gandhi were anxious to know if I was disturbing the prospects of Rahul Gandhi just before the 2024 general elections, the one who had dismissal in their tone wanted to know why I was wasting my time writing about someone who was, quote unquote, absolutely useless. He should be written off, not written about, was their argument. This why and why now question is not new to journalists and writers. I have been queried many times on these lines in my long journalistic career. Even when I wrote my previous book on the life of H.D. Devegowda, I was asked, why on him of all people? What has he done? People could barely hide their prejudice that either emanated from their caste, class, or ideological affiliations. I learned long ago that in order to live, one has to keep getting past the why question. I've done just that. Writing is not just about being contrarian or about reveling in anarchic joy, but is also about a moral imperative and a deeply felt urge to examine the immediate present and contemporary present, something that Ram Guha taught all of us. And he's here, and as Ashish Nandi and others, so we've learned a lot from them to engage with the present. At least for me, it is not about the fanciful idea of offering a historical corrective to things that may have gone wrong. Sometimes I tell myself that mine is a hack's progress. I don't suffer from pretensions. I know books make nothing happen. Like Auden said, poetry makes nothing happen, but merely survives in the valley of its making. Thank you. So I'll now read a small passage from the book which would sort of go with the theme of today's today's discussion. We couldn't even put up a banner because of all the confusions that happened in the last 3-4 days. We had to shift from a bigger hall to a smaller hall. Our sponsorships were cancelled, so that's a long story anyway. So I'm just going to read about 200, 300 words from the chapter called Imagining the Nation. This is chapter 5 in the book. If there is a phrase that Rahul Gandhi has made it his own to define his politics and the nation, then it is this: the idea of India. It is not a performative phrase that unravels the moment you mention it. Neither it is a taut harbinger of hope that could become a catchy election slogan, nor is it a philosophical precept. It is a trough that needs to be filled up with explanation and meaning each time it is uttered. Given its openness and abstraction, it is a phrase that academicians and intellectuals would be most comfortable dabbling with, not a leading politician who is expected to arrest the slide of his party's fortunes. Nevertheless, Rahul has hung on to it. He used this phrase frequently during the build-up to the 2019 general elections and continues to do so. Most times, he has used it as a simple line to distinguish between himself and the Congress party from the BJP and the RSS. He has used the phrase to mean and assert an undefined recent past in which India was harmonious, tolerant, compassionate, egalitarian, secular, modern, and economically flourishing, where democracy was practiced and democratic institutions were not under threat. This is an ideal past or a utopia he has been constructing to contrast and contradict the slide of each one of those parameters under Modi and the BJP's rule since 2014. The roseate picture of the past that Rahul paints to take on the BJP, if one were to simply go by election results and vote shares, is not exactly the collective memory of a vast electorate. Therefore, the phrase idea of India and its attendant meaning in his mind has not had the impact he has wanted it to have. In the impatient and prejudiced mainstream media, this indefinite phrase has only led to confusion and more confusion. It has allowed them to interpret it in whichever way they want and emphasize whatever they wish to. One commentator gave an embittered, nihilistic argument. Quote, his idea of India is clearly flattering. We are, he says, compassionate and filled with love for others. But then, this could be the summary of almost all nations in the world as told by their worst writers. Hundreds of professional politicians who are called poet laureates and other things have described their land in this manner. The fact is that there is no such thing as the idea of India. First of all, we cannot be sure what is Indian about India. First of all, we cannot be sure what is Indian about India. Every single scholar who has tried to answer the question, what unites India, has emerged from the exercise silly, unquote. Meanwhile, Modi has filled up the trough with his own meaning and interpretation of the idea of Bharat, as opposed to the idea of India. And since his narrative mythologizes the past, constructs an antiquity and civilizational glory for a modern nation, it has had a mesmerizing effect. It fills up people with pride. Interestingly, though, both Rahul and Modi are trying to define the past through a lens that embellishes their own outlooks and political agenda. The contest certainly is to define the past, and so far, Modi has been far ahead. Rahul does not emphatically say he will build a new India. Modi has actually taken over that line. He invariably says he will regain and restore India that has been lost and destroyed by the majoritarianism and the bigotry of the BJP and the RSS and the authoritarianism of Modi. For him, it is about the recovery of the soul of India, whatever he imagines it to be. Thank you.
Can I request the youngsters among us to leave the seats and come in right here? I mean, we have to be a little, volunteer, the youngsters, if they can volunteer and come in the front and leave their seats so that the elders can, we have to be inclusive, unlike what is happening outside. We have to be very inclusive. So if they can, please, so that some seats are left and, even the middle-aged can volunteer to come here. Whoever can volunteer so that the others can get a place to sit. There's some chairs have now been vacated, so please occupy those chairs. That's it. Huh? Yeah, no, that's fine. Fine. So, Apoorvanand now.
Explain what happened to IIC.
Huh?
We can explain what.
Yeah, I will give it. Let Salman also know.
बहुत शुक्रिया सुहास, और मैं माफ़ी मांगता हूं कि मैं हिंदुस्तानी में बात करूंगा।
क्या बात कर रहे हैं?
और ये इसलिए कि उस हिंदुस्तानी को ठीक तरीके से नहीं बरत पाने के लिए राहुल गांधी की काफ़ी आलोचना होती रही है। तो इसकी मुश्किलें क्या हैं ये हम सब जानते हैं। इस हिंदुस्तान की और इस हिंदुस्तान में बात करने की और बात करते वक्त सबसे रिश्ता बना पाने की यह कोई इतना आसान नहीं है। इसलिए जो मुश्किल राहुल गांधी की है वो शायद पूरे हिंदुस्तान की है। लेकिन बहुत शुक्रिया और सुगता, बहुत बहुत मुबारकबाद। जैसा मैंने पहले कहा था कि अगर आप अंग्रेज़ी के अल्फाज का इस्तेमाल करें तो एक एम्पैथेटिक या क्रिटिकल एम्पैथी के साथ किसी पर किताब कैसे लिखी जा सकती है, या आप इस किताब को पढ़कर जान सकते हैं। बहुत मुबारकबाद। यह किताब सिर्फ राहुल गांधी को फ़ायदा नहीं पहुंचाएगी, अगर वो पढ़ेंगे, यह किताब किसी को भी फ़ायदा पहुंचाएगी, क्योंकि इसमें राहुल गांधी की जद्दोजहद से आपका सामना होता है। जो जद्दोजहद उनकी है, हिंदुस्तान से वो कैसे रिश्ता बनाएं, हिंदुस्तान की आवाम से कैसे रिश्ता बनाएं, हिंदुस्तान की आवाम उनको कबूल कैसे करे। और उन्हें यह मालूम है, राहुल गांधी को, कि हिंदुस्तान की आवाम को उनको कबूल करना बहुत मुश्किल है, क्योंकि वो अपनी माँ के साथ हुए बर्ताव को देख चुके हैं और हम सारे लोग उसको देख चुके हैं कि इसी भारतवर्ष में जो अपने आप को वसुधैव कुटुंबकम के उसूलों का मुल्क कहता है, इस भारतवर्ष में जब यह ख्याल सिर्फ जाहिर किया गया कि हो सकता है कि कांग्रेस पार्टी, जिसने सबसे ज़्यादा सीटें हासिल की हैं, वह अपना नेता सोनिया गांधी को चुन ले, तो देश में स्यापा पड़ गया। स्टॉक मार्केट नीचे आ गया। आपको ब्लैक फ्राइडे, ब्लडी मंडे, वो हेडलाइंस याद होंगी। पहली बार ऐसा हुआ कि बंबई में स्टॉक ब्रोकर्स ने जुलूस निकाला कि किसी को प्रधानमंत्री नहीं बनने देना है। इस मांग के साथ जुलूस निकाला गया। पहली बार कांग्रेस के किसी नेता को उड़कर जाना पड़ा ये बतलाने के लिए कि लोगों की फिक्र शांत करने के लिए। तो राहुल गांधी ये देख चुके थे कि इस मुल्क को, जो ये कहता है कि हम सबको कबूल करते हैं, ये मुल्क कितना असहनशील है और उनकी माँ के साथ किस तरह का बर्ताव किया गया है। और उसके पहले शायद राहुल गांधी को यह भी पता हो कि जब उनकी दादी यानी इंदिरा गांधी ने फिरोज गांधी से शादी करने का इरादा किया था, तब पूरे मुल्क में क्या हुआ था और उसमें किस तरह की बहसें हुई थीं और किस तरह का दखल खुद गांधी को देना पड़ा था और बाकी लोगों को देना पड़ा था। तो मुल्क से रिश्ता बनाना आसान राहुल को ये सारी फिक्र ज़रूर रही होगी और उनका जिक्र अगर आप इस किताब को पढ़ेंगे तो इसमें बहुत ही सहानुभूति के साथ उन सारी उलझनों का जिक्र किया गया है जो उलझनें राहुल गांधी की उलझनें हैं। लेकिन हम आज की बात करें और आज की तस्वीर को अगर समझना हो तो उस खाली कुर्सी को आप देख सकते हैं। हमारा एक संगठन है पेन इंटरनेशनल, और पेन इंटरनेशनल या पेन चैप्टर्स में जब हम अपनी कॉन्फ्रेंसेस करते हैं तो हम खाली कुर्सियां तकरीबन हर मुल्क में रखते हैं या हर जगह, और वो उनके लिए होती हैं जो जेल में होते हैं, वैसे लेखक या वैसे पत्रकारों के लिए। इत्तेफाक से उर्मिलेश, और यह अच्छा इत्तेफाक है कि जेल में नहीं हैं, लेकिन वो जेल में हो सकते थे और आज वो यहाँ नहीं हैं। इनमें से कोई भी हो सकता है, नहीं हो सकता था। यह जो अनिश्चितता है या अनसर्टेनिटी है, यह अनिश्चितता आज के हिंदुस्तान के बारे में बताती है। आप में से जो लोग हॉल में हैं, इनमें से कुछ लोग नहीं हो सकते हैं और उसकी कोई वजह नहीं है। जैसे यह कहा जाए कि क्या उसकी ठोस वजह है, जैसा लोग पता करने की कोशिश करते हैं, चीन से पैसा मिला होगा। फिर लोग कहते हैं अच्छा उसके घर छापा पड़ा, लेकिन उसका क्या मतलब है। तो वो समझ नहीं पाते हैं कि ठीक है न्यूज़ क्लिक, लेकिन सुहेल हाशमी पर क्यों? अच्छा न्यूज़ क्लिक पर अगर पढ़ रहा है तो न्यूज़ क्लिक में अगर किसी ने सिर्फ 2 लेख लिखे हैं तो उस पर क्यों? तो हम वजहें खोजने की कोशिश करते हैं क्योंकि हमको इसकी आदत रही है। हम इस तरह की जमहूरियत में पले और बढ़े हैं जिसमें हर चीज़ की एक वजह हुआ करती थी। यहाँ तक कि जिसको सबसे बुरा वक्त माना जाता है आपातकाल, उसमें वजह मौजूद थी। लेकिन अब हमें मालूम है कि किसी चीज़ की कोई वजह होना ज़रूरी नहीं है। यानी अगर कोई गिरफ्तार हो तो ज़रूरी नहीं है कि उसने कुछ किया हो। मसलन अभी भी लोग मुझसे पूछते हैं उमर खालिद ने ज़रूर कुछ किया होगा, शर्जील इमाम ने ज़रूर कुछ किया होगा, या गुलफिशा फातिमा ने ज़रूर कुछ किया होगा, और मैं उनको समझा नहीं पाता हूं कि दरअसल उन्होंने कुछ नहीं किया है, क्योंकि हमारा दिमाग उस तरह काम नहीं करता है। तो 2014 के बाद हालात पूरी तरह से बदल गए हैं, और 2014 के बाद के हालात में क्या ये सिर्फ राहुल गांधी की मुश्किल है कि वो लोगों से बात नहीं कर पा रहे हैं, और जिन स्ट्रेंज बर्डन्स की बात की गई है, यानी जो बोझा राहुल गांधी पर है, वह सारा बोझा है जो दरअसल हमारा है। यानी जब मैं अपनी क्लासरूम में खड़ा हुआ तो मेरे एक छात्र ने पूछा कि, उसने कहा कि सर आप गांधी की बात कर रहे थे, लेकिन गांधी का एक आश्रम तो टाटा ने बनवाया था और टाटा उनके साथ बैठा करते थे। तो मैंने कहा कि आपको मुझे स्रोत बताना पड़ेगा। राम गुहा ने गांधी पर किताब लिखी है और लोगों ने भी किताब लिखी है, आपने यह तथ्य कहाँ से निकाला, तो मैं आपकी बात मान लूँगा। तो बैठ गया, फिर थोड़ी देर बाद खड़ा हुआ और उसने कहा कि लेकिन सर क्या कुछ कहने के लिए कुछ जानना ज़रूरी होता है? और ये एक ऐसी बात थी जो वाकई सच है। क्या कुछ कहने के लिए कुछ जानना ज़रूरी होता है? और आप उसकी बात को क्यों नहीं मानेंगे? क्योंकि वो ये कह रहा है और चाहता है कि आप उसको मान लें, और अगर आप नहीं मान रहे हैं तो इसका मतलब आप उसकी इज्जत नहीं करते हैं, आप उसके ख्याल को नहीं मानते हैं। इस हालत में आप किसी से बात कैसे करेंगे, या जनता से बात कैसे करेंगे जिसकी उम्मीद राहुल गांधी से की जाती है कि वो एक बात करें और समझाएं। राहुल गांधी की शुरुआत के समय में बहुत लोगों ने कहा कि राहुल गांधी को आक्रामक होना चाहिए। उसके बाद राहुल गांधी में जब आक्रामकता दिखलाई पड़ी तो लोगों ने कहा कि नहीं नहीं, ये तो बहुत ही ज़्यादा हार्श है, राहुल गांधी को हार्श नहीं होना चाहिए। लेकिन जब वे उस अंदाज में बात करने लगे जिसका एक लंबा जिक्र इस किताब में है और लंबा तबसरा है वो सुगता ने किया है, तब लोगों ने कहा कि राहुल गांधी को ये पता नहीं कि वो राजनेता हैं, वो कोई स्पिरिचुअल लीडर नहीं है, फिर वो ये बातें क्यों कर रहे हैं? तो एक समय एक शिकायत ये है कि गहराई नहीं है, एक समय यह शिकायत है कि उनको सिर्फ व्यावहारिक बातें करनी चाहिए। और यह कांग्रेस के लोगों से भी जब आप मिलेंगे तो कांग्रेस के लोगों का एक साथ दो तरह का बर्ताव राहुल से, या दो तरह की प्रतिक्रिया दिखलाई पड़ती है। एक जो मोहब्बत की है और दूसरी जो फ्रस्ट्रेशन की है। 2015 में राहुल गांधी की टीम के एक सदस्य ने मुझे यहीं के बिरला लेन में कहा कि हमारी मुश्किल ये है कि राहुल गांधी को पावर में कोई दिलचस्पी नहीं है, जो बात सुगता ने लिखी है। और ये 2015 में उनकी टीम के एक सदस्य ने मुझे कहा कि राहुल ने हमसे कहा कि आई एम नॉट इंटरेस्टेड इन पावर, और उसने कहा कि वी आर ट्राइंग टू कन्विंस राहुल दैट ही शुड बी इंटरेस्टेड इन पावर, अदरवाइज ही वोंट बी एबल टू डू पॉलिटिक्स। पॉलिटिक्स इज अबाउट पावर। लेकिन मुझे 2014 का एक सेमिनार याद है जिसमें जोया साहिबा भी थी, राहुल गांधी आए थे उसमें, और राहुल गांधी ने यह कहा अंत में कि मैं, और हम लोगों ने कांग्रेस की काफ़ी आलोचना की थी, आपने भी की थी, मैंने भी की थी, सब ने की थी, और राहुल ने कहा कि मैं आप सब की बात से इत्तेफाक रखता हूँ। हमारी मुश्किल ये है कि हम पावर गेम में हैं, इसलिए जो बातें आप कह रहे हैं वो उसी तरह हम नहीं कह पाते। और मुझे याद है कि जब सामूहिक फ़ोटो लेने के लिए खड़ा किया गया तो मैंने सुना कि वो किसी से कह रहे थे कि मैं चाहता हूँ आप सारे लोग कांग्रेस में चले आएं। जो मेरे बगल में खड़े थे उनसे वो कह रहे थे कि मैं चाहता हूँ आप जैसे लोग कांग्रेस में चले आएँ। तो मुझे राहुल गांधी की वो दुविधा समझ में आई, जो दुविधा है कि इस कांग्रेस में वो कैसे रहेंगे। ये कांग्रेस जो 60 साल तक किसी विचार की पार्टी नहीं रही है बल्कि सिर्फ सत्ता की पार्टी रही है, उसमें किसी विचार को कैसे लाया जाएगा। और जो जिस दुविधा की बात ये किताब करती है कि क्या एक ऐसी पार्टी को जिसमें हर कोई आ सकता है, इस पार्टी को किसी एक विचार से बांध कर रखा जा सकता है, वो विचार धर्मनिरपेक्षता का ही क्यों ना हो, क्या उससे बांध के रखा जा सकता है। तो कांग्रेस से जो हमारी शिकायतें हैं एक साथ, वो शिकायत ये है कि कांग्रेस ने भारत की संस्कृति पर ध्यान नहीं दिया, और उसके बाद है कांग्रेस पर्याप्त रूप से धर्मनिरपेक्ष नहीं हुई, जितना उसको होना चाहिए था उतनी नहीं हुई, और कांग्रेस को दोनों से जूझना पड़ता है। फिर कहा जाता है हिंदुत्व का जो इतना बढ़ा, उसमें जो इतना बढ़ गया हिंदुत्व, उसका कारण यह है कि कांग्रेस ने हिंदू धर्म को छोड़ ही दिया। अब ये कांग्रेस का काम नहीं था। राहुल गांधी जब इस काम को लेते हैं तो लोग उनकी पात्रता पर संदेह करते हैं, क्या वो क्वालिफाइड हैं? राहुल गांधी क्या जन्म से हिंदू है? अगर वो जन्म से हिंदू नहीं है तो क्या उनको हिंदू धर्म के बारे में बात करने की इजाज़त है? तो मैं राहुल गांधी को जब देखता हूं तो मुझे एक साथ सहानुभूति का अनुभव होता है, क्योंकि मैं जानता हूं कि और यहाँ मैं अपनी बात ख़त्म कर रहा हूं कि एक बहुत दिलचस्प बात है, ख़ासकर गांधी परिवार के साथ, कांग्रेस के साथ और बुद्धिजीवियों के उनसे रिश्ते के साथ। मैंने ये बात देखी है कि बुद्धिजीवी भारतीय जनता पार्टी या भारतीय जनता पार्टी के नेताओं के पक्ष में कई बार बोलना ठीक समझते हैं, क्योंकि उन्हें लगता है ऐसा करके वो संतुलित दिखलाई पड़ रहे हैं, बैलेंस्ड। लेकिन कांग्रेस या गांधी परिवार, इससे किसी भी तरह की कुर्बत, इससे उन्हें लगता है एक धब्बा लग जाएगा उन पर, और इसलिए कांग्रेस से बुद्धिजीवी समुदाय में और ख़ासकर गांधी समुदाय से, गांधी परिवार से, और उसमें भी राहुल गांधी से एक ख़ास तरह के, उस कौन सा शब्द होगा मैं नहीं कह सकता हूँ, मैं घृणा नहीं कहना चाहता हूँ, लेकिन वो कुछ कुछ इस पर आके ख़त्म होती है कि अगर ये नहीं होते तो बेहतर था, अगर ये इस दुनिया में ही नहीं होते तो बेहतर था। और इस हालत में राहुल गांधी निकल के काम कैसे करें और इन अपेक्षाओं को पूरा कैसे करें, जो अपेक्षाएं, और उन कमियों को कैसे एड्रेस करें जो दरअसल हमारी सामूहिक कमियां हैं, और उस भाषा को कैसे विकसित करें, उस ज़ुबान को, जो ज़ुबान हमने पिछले 60 साल में साझा तौर पर कभी विकसित नहीं की। यानी राहुल गांधी को क्या हमने मुहैया कराई है या नेताओं को वो ज़ुबान मुहैया कराई है, यह सवाल मेरे दिमाग में आते हैं। जैसा मैंने कहा कि आज की यह पूरी बातचीत अलग होती, लेकिन यह बात हम कर रहे हैं, बाद में सुहास बतलाएंगे कि इस हॉल में हमारा बैठना, यहाँ आना, बैनर का नहीं होना, उर्मिलेश का यहाँ नहीं होना, और बहुत सारे लोगों का यहाँ नहीं होना जो सुगता की किताब होने की वजह से यहाँ होते, लेकिन उनमें से कई लोधी रोड स्पेशल सेल में अभी इंटरोगेशन झेल रहे हैं, कई वहाँ से अभी छोड़े गए हैं और थक कर बाहर गए हैं। इस हालत में आप काम कर रहे हैं, और यह राहुल गांधी ने, यह बात राहुल गांधी बार बार कहते हैं कि राहुल गांधी का काम एक विपक्ष के नेता का काम है, और विपक्ष तभी काम कर सकता है जब जनतंत्र में बाकी सब कुछ काम करे, जैसे मीडिया काम करे, जैसे बाकी संस्थान काम करें। लेकिन अगर इंडिया इंटरनेशनल सेंटर आपको राहुल गांधी पर बात ही न करने दे, अगर उसके लिए वो हॉल ना मुहैया कराए, अगर कोई अखबार आपको ना छापे, आप इसकी कल्पना कर सकते हैं कि भारत के सबसे बड़े विपक्ष के सबसे बड़े नेता का लेख इंडियन एक्सप्रेस कहाँ छापता है, किस जगह पर छापता है, इसकी आप कल्पना कर सकते हैं। तो यह जो हिकारत है, यह हिकारत और यह असहयोग और यह एक अभियान जो मीडिया का अभियान है, सारे पुराने बुद्धिजीवियों का अभियान है और सारे संस्थानों का अभियान है, उस अभियान के बीच में हम ये अपेक्षा कर रहे हैं कि इस जनतंत्र की नैया को राहुल गांधी किसी तरह पार करा दें। ये उनसे हमारी अपेक्षा है और ऐसा होते न देखकर हम सब उन पर टूट पड़ते हैं। बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया।
Come, Salman. I was waiting to you to be here. For you. You come here. I was waiting for Salman to say what I am going to say now.
No, that lessens my burden.
You see, this the title of the book, Strange Burdens. Now, even this meeting has had strange burdens. Okay? So, this, can we have that title again? Can we have that title? Now, there, it was supposed to be IIC. Huh? IIC invites you to a discussion. So, we had to perforce put Penguin, Random House, and Sugata Srinivasaraju there because on Saturday at 6:22, I got a call and then I said I want a written communication that IIC is withdrawing from linkage with this program. And that afternoon, it had been circulated by email to all members that IIC is part of this whole thing and they are giving the hall. And then today morning, Sugata had to pay up the 10,000 rupees for this hall. We had in fact asked for that bigger hall and then we were given this hall and then, just to, we could have taken the big hall now and paid 5,000 more. But then the point was that this would have caused a lot of inconvenience to people, informing everybody that it's that hall now and not this hall, and so much confusion, And that then reminded me, and in fact, Ashish Nandi sitting here, right in the front, he reminded me that during the emergency, we go back to 74, 75, Rajni Kothari and Ramesh Thapar and he himself had organized a meeting at IIC and they had to be pushed out. They were pushed out by the then director who happened to be in ICS. But whatever. So the point is that, I am a trustee of IIC. I will find out what exactly happened. But this whole thing, this paranoia, which is somehow invading our minds, is to use Ashish Das' phrase, the paranoia, is not exactly how IIC should be. But anyway, that's it. And then the missing, what Apoorvanand mentioned, that, that chair, that empty chair, which also represents what we are facing. Urmilesh, he's promised to come, but he's, I don't know what all he's gone through the whole day at that special cell of the Delhi police, which is not very far from here. It's at Lodi colony, but whatever. So that's it. I have now explained, I hope, what happened in the little I know of exactly what happened. So I'll now request, try. Saiyidaji, can I have that?
Sir.
Thank you.
मेरी भी मुबारकबाद बहुत बहुत सुगता को और मैं भी इस मिली जुली ज़बान में बात करूँगी क्योंकि जो इस वक्त जो लहर अपूर्वा ने लगाई है उसमें मैं भी उस लहर पे मैं भी चलूँगी। तो सबसे पहले तो I want to say, and mixing, I want to say a little bit about the book. It's as those of us who have looked at it, it's not a biography, not a hagiography. It is a political commentary. And it's an amazingly incisive work. Painstaking research, interviews, speeches, communication. This book, Strange Burdens, the very name resounds with a lot of us. I want to talk a little bit about जो जिंदगी इन्होंने जिस तरह से रिवील की है राहुल गांधी की, a life which was tragically disrupted by violent deaths. I also had the privilege of working with Mrs. Gandhi, Mrs. Indira Gandhi, briefly. I also worked as a planning commission member with Mrs. Sonia Gandhi. I've never met Rahul Gandhi, but for me, this family has a very deep connection with me. It was just the day or 2 days before Bhuvaneshwar that I spoke and I exchanged, rather she told me what I'm supposed to do, and that was the catastrophic moment for the country. 1984 and 1991. Sugata writes, when he talks about the exchange of letters and the exchange of communication between Mrs. Gandhi and Priyanka Gandhi with the assassins of Rajiv Gandhi. And he writes, in the hands of a master, and I think you are a bit of a master, if I may say so, in the hands of a master, it could be chiseled into literature. That entire event, 1991 and 1984. To me, this life reveals like a Greek tragedy. Oedipus, Antigone, Agamemnon, it unfolds as a Greek tragedy. And I asked a friend very close to me, who is not well these days, and I said, I'm going to this very formidable panel, with this formidable panel and a wonderful, audience, and हमारे जो हम सफ़र हैं, हमारे जो साथी हैं, मैं क्या कहूँगी उनसे, मैं क्या कहूँगी? And he said something which I want to just, those 3 lines I want to quote. In the context of Rahul Gandhi, the more they silence the voices of truth and justice, the more the human spirit to fight back will be ignited. In the context of what Apoorva said, Urmilesh, Suhail Hashmi, Sharjeel Imam, all those for whom our heart beats. And he said, the more they silence the voices of truth and justice, the more the human spirit to fight back will be ignited. Zulm feeds the battle for freedom and justice. Jitna zulm hoga, utni hi freedom और justice के लिए जो ये हमारी जो spirit है, वो उतना ही जागरूक होगी. और ये आप सुगता ये भी उन्होंने लिखा है, and I really want to quote this. His entire struggle is to become ordinary, while the masses see his birth as extraordinary. He wants to be seen as a humble, kind, generous, forgiving, sincere, caring, ethical, and much more. He probably is all of this, but none of this is associated with power and politics. ये आपके अल्फाज हैं, मैं quote कर रही हूँ. The scorn and alienation heaped on him also creates an aura of tragedy around him. तो वो जो tragedy की मैंने आपसे बात की, मैंने Oedipus की बात की, Agamemnon की बात की, Antigone की बात की, it's in that context. to me, reading Sugata and whatever I have read and heard him from a distance, to me, Rahul Gandhi really symbolizes the idea of India. When I think about the idea of India, I think of Gandhi, I think of Nehru, and I think of Azad, and I think of Ambedkar. Gandhi, सफ में आखिरी इंसान के लिए दर्दमंदी होनी चाहिए. Gandhi. Nehru, scientific temper and secularism. Maulana Azad, institutions and Hindu-Muslim unity. Ambedkar, sanctity of the constitution. इसमें कोई ऐसा जुज़ नहीं है जिसको हमने नहीं सुना है उनके अंदाज में, उनके एक्शंस में और उनके लेख में. और इसी चीज़ को लेके वो जीते हैं. एक लीडर में जो क्वालिटीज़ हैं जो आपके लेख से जागरूक होती हैं, कैरेक्टर, क्लैरिटी, कमिटमेंट, कंसर्न. आई एम नॉट नेसेसरली डूइंग एन alliteration, but these are the qualities: character, clarity, commitment and concern. And concern for that, concern for what? Concern for those who are at the bottom of the pyramid. And above all, equality, inclusion, democracy, diversity. He says what he means to me. He says, and I have again learned from your book, he means what he says and he says what he means. बात लंबी भी हो सकती है और ब्रीफ भी हो सकती है, मगर अब मैं अपनी बात को अगर एक राउंड अप करूं तो आई थिंक what I would like to bring to you are two little pieces of poetry. एक में हमारी senior poet, her name is Zehra Nigaah, वो कराची में है, she is close to 90 and inspires us. और अब जिन हालात में हम रह रहे हैं और जिसका जिक्र अपूर्वा ने इतने विस्तार से किया है, वो क्या हालात हैं उसके बारे में ज़हरा निगाह क्या कहती हैं. और इन हालात से इस वक्त राहुल गांधी जूझ रहे हैं. कहती हैं, सुना है जंगलों का भी कोई दस्तूर होता है, सुना है जंगलों का भी कोई दस्तूर होता है, कभी तूफान आ जाए कोई पुल टूट जाए, कभी तूफान आ जाए कोई पुल टूट जाए, किसी लकड़ी के तख्ते पर गिलहरी, सांप, बकरी और चीता साथ होते हैं. वो उसको they confront that disaster together. कभी तूफान आ जाए कोई पुल टूट जाए, किसी लकड़ी के तख्ते पर गिलहरी, सांप, बकरी और चीता साथ होते हैं. एंड देन व्हाट शी, उसके बाद उनकी दुआ है, सुना है जंगलों का भी कोई दस्तूर होता है, खुदा वंदा जलीलो मोतबर दानाओ दीना. ओ गॉड, यू आर ऑलमाइटी, यू आर ऑल सीइंग, यू आर ऑल कंपैशनेट. मेरे इस शहर में अब जंगलों ही का कोई कानून नाफिज कर. ये शहर जो है ये जंगल से आज बदतरीन है, तो इसमें जंगलों का भी कोई दस्तूर नाफिज कर. ये चैलेंज है इस वक्त हमारे लिए, जब हमारे दोस्त या तो they are being interrogated or the friends who are being incarcerated. This is the challenge before us. And I want to conclude by again complimenting Sugata and really the fact that इतने लोग आए, हमारे पुराने दोस्त, हमारे स्कूल फ्रेंड के दावत में, सुहास की दावत पे, इसका मतलब दिल सबके धड़क रहे हैं. और इसी को साहिर लुधियानवी साहब ने कैसे कहा है, ये 10 साल जो हमारे गुजरे हैं, कितने सालों से ये वहशत का चलन जारी है, कितने सालों से ये वहशत का चलन जारी है, कितने सालों से है कायम ये गुनाहों का रिवाज. ये हम वहशत ज़दा भी हैं और हम गुनाहगार हैं. कितने सालों से ये वहशत का चलन जारी है, कितने सालों से है कायम ये गुनाहों का रिवाज। हम जो इंसानों की तहजीब लिए फिरते हैं, वी थिंक वी आर द civilized, the greatest civilized nation, we are the mother of democracy. हम जो इंसानों की तहजीब लिए फिरते हैं, हम सब वैशी कोई जंगल के दरिंदों में नहीं. No one can at this point surpass the kind of trials and tribulations and challenges that we are confronting. And I think at this point, if I may say so, I hope I don't sound like a hagiography, but I think इस वक्त there's a shining star in the firmament. And हम इसी उम्मीद पे अपनी ज़िंदगी के आखिरी मरहले पे पहुंच गए हैं कि इससे शायद हमारा मुल्क एक करवट ले और कोई नया सवेरा आ सके. शुक्रिया बहुत.
Can I request Salman now to take the last? No.
I must apologize for this very unusual thing for me to have come so late, but I can't figure out what happened in the city today. I left from Firozshah Road, and every roundabout was just choked with traffic. Possibly some very important person must have gone through the city, leaving an imprint on all of us. So I'm really sorry that I've come so late. I'd promised Sugata that I would be at the earlier fixed date, that I would be at his event. But when he sent me his book, I began to wonder what exactly I would be able to say. It's a remarkable book. I mean, it's a fantastic book. But the trouble I have with this the contents, and the trouble I have with the subject itself, is that I work with Mr. Gandhi as our leader. Of course, we have the president, Mr. Kharge, but Mr. Gandhi, despite everything he has said and done, cannot shake off many of us who follow him as a leader. And it's very peculiar. There are many peculiar things in his life, and this is also very peculiar. A lot of us are much older than him, have been in politics much longer than he has. But he carries himself with enormous amount of gravitas, which is very difficult to explain to the world at large, that there is a lot of gravitas in that man, which impels many people much older than him to genuinely treat him as a leader. But the problem with discourse in our country now is that you can't genuinely admire a person. You cannot generally associate or follow that person if he happens to be from a particular family, if he happens to be from a particular part of history, because there are words thrown around of, you're a sycophant, you're doing it for your personal benefit, you're doing it for... honestly, if there was personal benefit was the primary thing in the Congress party of today, a lot of those who've left us would not have left us. But they did. People will say that may also have been personal benefit, and they left for that reason. Very, very ironically, many of the people who have left the party were people who were known by all of us to be very close to Mr. Rahul Gandhi, and towards whom Mr. Rahul Gandhi was very, very generous. And when I say generous, it's not just giving positions of power, but the personal trust that a person can give to someone is what we saw him give to many of these people. And what persuaded them to let go of such a fantastic, beautiful relationship, one can't understand. But this takes me to my next point, is that, of course, the strange burdens described by Sugata are historical burdens. These are burdens that anyone who was born to his position would carry in one way or the other. But of course, in his case, That burden includes a lot of burden of tragedy and angst, and I don't see anger in him ever, but many people in that position would have been extremely angry with the world for what has been taken away from them in infancy or in their youth. But one doesn't see that anger in him. But the peculiar thing is that he has people who dislike him intensely, and there are people who, and I honestly say this, people who genuinely are fond of him and believe that he has a great deal to offer to this country. But he is a complex person because of history, because of circumstances. He's an extremely complex person. Complexity in the best sense of the word, the best sense of the word. How deeply religious he is, and how much like Nehru, a virtual atheist he can be in certain attitudes, I think is something that will require another 2 books before one can get to the bottom of that. What he thinks of religion, how he treats religion, the way we have formulated religion in our lives, not the true religious values that are essence of Indian civilization, but religion, way we have developed it in politics in our country, the attitude that he has to that, for instance. But for him, as for anyone in public life, people should give credit for surviving in captivity. We are in public life in this country, are captives of other people's wishes and perceptions. Now, of course, in democracy, you must respond to the will of the people that you hope to represent. But the fact is that in our democracy, people are made captives and made to do many, many things that they wouldn't do in free life if they were completely free. So how much of this burden is a burden that he feels is historically upon his shoulders for him to ensure that this burden would not crush him, but will allow him to do the beautiful thing that he wants to do for this country. I think for anybody who wants to try and understand what he is, just go back a few decades and you would know there was a persona of his father who I once described in an article that I did before I came into public life. And I spoke about the remarkable smile that late Rajiv Gandhi had, the wonderful things that smile could do. But I'm told, and I'm not very close to Mr. Sanjay Gandhi, but I know that many people in politics who had worked very closely with Mr. Sanjay Gandhi spoke of the grit that Sanjay Gandhi had, the very tough kind of persona he had for tough times. So if you have tough times, you have to be tough. Can you do an amalgam of the two brothers? And if you do an amalgam, you possibly may find that amalgam in Mr. Rahul Gandhi. He is, so it's a silken glove, but a steel grip. I mean, he is hard when you have to be hard, and tougher than one can imagine. And he is silken and soft where one would want to see something soft and silken. Now, so much to be said about one single leader in this country would only be attributed by people who don't like us as being sheer sycophancy. But I think that we are lucky that we have in our midst a leader of his caliber and quality. Now it's for us to hope and wish that the country will give space, opportunity, and a path for him to take the country forward in a remarkable many ways. And I'm not sure how many of us will be around for applauding and participating in the journey that is still to come. He's made this journey from Kanyakumari to Kashmir, remarkable in itself, and I think it has done wonderful things to Indian politics, and I hope the lasting legacy of that remains. But there is a journey which is a much greater journey that he has to do beyond Kanyakumari to Kashmir. I don't know how many of us will have the stamina, strength, and the survivability to be able to do that journey. But I can only pray and hope that this country, for its own sake, will give him a path for that journey. And I can pray that that journey will take us all to success. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Salman just mentioned that Bharat Jodo Yatra. I just want to read out an excerpt. You know, I and S.N. Sahu is sitting there. We joined the Yatra when it reached on the 24th of December 2022. And this was from Daryaganj to Red Fort, the last part of it. And then there was this, you know, the palpable ownership which we saw with the minorities joining. I mean, it was seen to be believed. I mean, they had such tremendous ownership of that whole yatra. So here it goes. This is Sugata writing. It is the coup that Modi perhaps did not expect. All the photographic moments of Rahul Gandhi's yatra contrast with Modi's photographic experience. Now, as a documentary filmmaker, I think Sugata writes so well. All the photographic moments of Rahul Gandhi's yatra contrast with Modi's photographic experience. Whatever has become apparent to us, there are videos often circulated on social media which showed that Modi wanted to be alone in the frame or create an exclusive one. People were being hushed away from Modi's frame. But in Rahul Gandhi's frame, people are crowding every moment. People are being pulled into it, not pushed away. Can I ask Prithviraj now to come? Very photographic, the language.
At the outset, I must compliment Sugata for a very timely book on Rahul Gandhi, because he's going to be very crucial during this coming year. Whether the opposition parties will be able to form a formidable challenge to Mr. Modi or not, Mr. Rahul Gandhi will play a very significant role in shaping that opposition alliance and taking it to success, which I personally believe can be done. Love him or hate him, Mr. Rahul Gandhi will be an important political personage for the next 25 years. We may not be around, but he will be a significant player in Indian political scene. Some of us have had a chance to work very closely with him. And we have seen him grow. Initially, it was a journey of discovery of India like his father, late father did. But of late, I think it's journey of self-discovery, of penance, of tapasya, the arduous journey that he undertook from Kanyakumari to Srinagar. Many people thought it would not be completed, but he did complete it. And I think it was a journey of self-discovery more than the discovery of India, discovery of people of India. But he's all the time in a learning mode, understanding himself, understanding the political scene, and understanding people of India. Suhas also has mentioned imagining the nation. We discuss what is happening outside today. All the institutions of democracy have been subverted. or captured, and what more happens in the next few days that are left for the Lok Sabha election, if they happen on time, one doesn't know. But I think Congress party, being the largest opposition party, will have to play a very significant role in what is being attempted. And Mr. Rahul Gandhi, as the principal leader of that party, my leader also, will play a very significant role in making sure that that actually happens. Many have predicted that the opposition unity will not happen. But whether the country survives as a democracy will largely be dependent on what happens in the May 24 Lok Sabha election. The only way we can stop the BJP juggernaut, Mr. Modi, right now is to successfully implement what is being tried to be done by the India Alliance, which is try to make sure that the opposition vote is not split. And that is precisely what Mr. Modi is doing, as you might have seen in Maharashtra, and it's happening in Telangana and other states. The attempt to make sure that the opposition vote gets split. And what happened in 2014 and 2019 is repeated again. And in that whole exercise that's going to follow in next 6 months or so, Mr. Rahul Gandhi will play a very decisive role. There are some among us who feel that he must be projected as a future leader against Mr. Modi because we're often taunted. हमारे पास तो मोदी है, आपके पास कौन है? Opposition parties cannot get into that trap. So the big question for 24 is, can we repeat what Jayaprakash Narayanji did in 1977 against Indira Gandhi? If you're able to repeat that, I think reversal of the fortunes is possible. What happens after the election results? One doesn't know. I mean, there is enough political maturity in Indian political system to find answers to problems when they come up. But I think Sugata has done a wonderful job. It's a really treatise on leadership in Indian context. We have hundreds of thousands of books on leadership from the Western point of view, talking about leaders in the West during the wars and even going back to the Roman period. But very few books have appeared in the context of current Indian context. Mr. Rahul Gandhi personally has faced a lot of intolerance. There have been tragedy in his life because of that intolerance. I don't think any other person in India has been so wildly abused as Mr. Rahul Gandhi has been. To retain the sanity in that barrage of social media and other hammering requires a different kind of personality. And I think the book has, it's not a, first of all, when I got an invitation, I first wanted to find out whether it was an authorized biography or it was not. But then, as Amidaji clearly, correctly mentioned, it is a political commentary on the person of Mr. Rahul Gandhi, on the political times that that book describes, ever since he actively joined politics in 2004. Some of us even suggested to him that he join the cabinet in 2004 to 2014 period. His constant refrain was, I don't want to create second center of power. To which I always used to joke with him, so look, Mrs. Gandhi and Dr. Manmohan Singh, there are two centers of power, but they're making it work. Why can't you do that? And it's for you to make sure that you don't become a more important center of power, but you should join the cabinet and get some administrative hands-on experience, which I personally think would have done him a great deal because he's had opportunities to administer, but he gave up in between, and some of us were not very happy that he gave up his presidentship of the Congress party, because it entailed some administrative functions. You had to sit in the chair, meet lots of people who come with the grievances and wants favor seekers and all that. And that's not a very glamorous side of politics. It's the nitty-gritty of running an organization, which he, unfortunately, accepting the responsibility of 2019 defeat, he quit. So some of us strongly felt that if he had had an administrative experience during the Manmohan Singh government, to the later part of the UPA too, would have done him a great deal of good, and he would have been a more complete leader. But he's constantly learning. Sugata has mentioned many critical events in his life. Of course, when he entered politics, particularly focusing on political aspects of it. Small things, but they reveal a lot about the person. And I think constantly been learning from those experiences. He has, of course, changed the Congress party into a more youthful fighting wing. There have been, some of us had felt that maybe Congress party should have been more democratic and should have gone through elections and all that. We had election process, we got election to the Congress president, which was long overdue. But then other process of elections did not happen. I think we are in midst of very interesting times. The book has come at a very appropriate time before the first round of the assembly elections, the 5 elections that will happen maybe in the next couple of months. And then, of course, the all-important 24 Lok Sabha election. And how Mr. Rahul Gandhi addresses the issues, campaigns actively. Will he play the role of an active campaigner? Will you play a role of a person who forges the opposition unity? Maybe takes a step back at times. And essentially, the first objective was to make sure that democracy survives, for which we must make sure that there is a change of government in 24, and a more democratic government takes the place of what is happening today. What is happening today, literally what's happening today outside in Delhi. So I think the book also should become an essential reading for all people who want to join politics. A lot of people ask me particularly, a lot of youth, if we go to colleges and all that, say that, look, I want to join politics, what can I do? There are no easy answers. I always tell them that you must define what politics means. If you want to fight for elected office, it's a lot harder issue. But if you want to join public policy, then any one of you can do that and make sure that you have an impact on what's going to happen in the country today. But it's neither here nor there when these questions we get asked when you address the youth here. But these are very, very critical days ahead of us. And Sugata has brought out personality of Rahul Gandhi as he has grown between 2004 and now. The ups and downs, successes and failures. I remember the times in 2013 when he was just waiting to be anointed as the leader. In 2014, all of us thought that, well, Lok Sabha election is just a formality, that we'll have Mr. Rahul Gandhi as a leader for many, many years to come. That didn't happen like that. And Congress party's fortunes have not been, we know what the fortunes are for the last 10 years. How can you fight the machinations of the BJP, the Modi-Shah duo? What's happening in Maharashtra, the Maharashtra Assembly today, I know what's happening. I don't know whether a particular party has split or not. Maybe a month and a year and a half later, The process is still going on, and it's a farce. The anti-defection law needs to be immediately scrapped and a simple, legislation brought in place. That will not happen now because it suits the ruling party fine. And so we'll all have to observe what happens in next year or so before the elections and what role Mr. Rahul Gandhi will play in shaping up that opposition unity. And you can, from the book, look at his personality from various angles, various crises that he has faced, various successes he has been, his Bharat Jodo Yatra, whether there'll be a second edition of Bharat Jodo Yatra, East-West or West-East. And what role does he choose to play in the coming year or so? Whether he'll launch himself the leadership position, whether he want to be launched in the leadership position, or he'll like to play a role of a creator, a person who forges the opposition unity, because there's no one else who can play that role of forging the opposition unity, being the largest opposition party in India today. So I think once again I must compliment Sugata for a wonderful job. Even when I went through the book, there are many incidences which I was not aware of, particularly of recent times, and how it has shaped his own personality and how it impacted the Indian National Congress and to some extent the political space in the country today. So thank you for giving me some time. Thank you, Suhas. Thank you.
Before we take the questions, Apoorvanand wants 2 minutes. Go ahead, please.
The strangest burden, which I forgot, and it again tells something about our times. राहुल गांधी हिंदू धर्म को फिर से परिभाषित करने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं, लेकिन शायद कांग्रेस पार्टी के नेता से उम्मीद यह है कि वो धर्मनिरपेक्षता को फिर से परिभाषित कर पाएंगे। और वो दुविधा क्या है, जब मोहम्मद इखलाक का कत्ल हुआ तो राहुल गांधी गए, और मुझे राहुल गांधी की टीम के एक सदस्य ने कहा कि उनसे राहुल गांधी ने बतलाया कि उन्होंने कांग्रेस के बहुत सारे नेताओं से पूछा और सब ने उन्हें जाने से मना किया। 2016 में जब जवाहरलाल नेहरू विश्वविद्यालय में, आप जानते हैं, कन्हैया, उमर खालिद, बाकी लोगों के साथ जो हुआ, उसके बाद राहुल गांधी फिर जवाहरलाल नेहरू विश्वविद्यालय गए और फिर मुझे ये बतलाया गया कि कांग्रेस पार्टी में इसे लेकर काफ़ी दुविधा थी कि राहुल गांधी ने कांग्रेस का काफ़ी नुकसान किया है। अभी राहुल गांधी कुंवर दानिश अली के पास गए जब उनके साथ गाली गलौज की गई उनके मुसलमान होने की वजह से, और यह एक ऐसा मसला है जिस पर हम सब लोगों को सोचना चाहिए कि हिंदुस्तान की जमहूरियत का रिश्ता मुसलमानों के साथ क्या होगा। इस सवाल का जवाब दिए बिना और किसी सवाल का जवाब नहीं दिया जा सकता। अगर आप मुसलमानों के कत्ल, मुसलमानों के साथ हो रहे जुल्म, हेमंत बिस्वा शर्मा का बयान जिसमें वो कहते हैं कि मुझे 10 साल तक मियाँ लोगों का वोट नहीं चाहिए, और इस पर पूरे देश में कोई शोभ, कोई गुस्सा कहीं नहीं उभरता, कोई एडिटोरियल, कोई दूसरी चीज़ नहीं उभरती। यह सबसे बड़ा सवाल है या बर्डन है जिसको आप कह सकते हैं, जिसका जवाब क्या सिर्फ राहुल गांधी को खोजना है या बाकी लोगों को भी खोजना है। मुझे सिर्फ इतनी चीज़ जोड़नी थी।
So we'll pick up some questions if there are any, which of course there must be. Yes, yeah. So we'll just go ahead. Huh? Yeah, go ahead. Okay. Do we have just one sec? We'll get a mic for you. No, it's being recorded, no? So yeah. No, just hold on. Just hold on. Yeah, give it there. Yeah, आप choice मत करिए, हमें करनी दीजिए.
Sure. Just a small observation. You know, when Rahul Gandhi was out of power, he was thrown out of parliament and then of his house and etc., etc. When he came back, there was a golden opportunity to make a historic kind of speech in parliament. And I thought he squandered that great opportunity, and he spoke at random and in impromptu in a way in which he could, Bharat Mata has been murdered, and I mean, those were like very, very loose shots in cricketing analogy. So you think he lacks that political acumen where, you seize the opportunity and you leave a mark. It's like something to remember for a long time. How a member of parliament is being deprived of his seats and then thrown out of his house, and then he comes back through the court. I mean, anybody, including Suhas, yeah.
Thank you, Vipulji. In fact, in the book, I sort of speak about, he does that constantly. It's not the first time that it was happening in Parliament. In fact, I was extremely disappointed. In fact, that night I was on Rajdeep's show, and I was asked the same question, and I was more upset because he was borrowing the idiom of the RSS to speak on such a important, occasion when he had returned to Parliament. At the end of the Bharat Jodo Yatra, this is something that I write in the book as well, where he's walked across India from Kanyakumari to Kashmir, and one thought he would speak from experience of having met so many people, having touched lives, having sort of experienced love and affection firsthand. But then what does he do there? There's a certain pattern which I trace at every bend of his life, career, very important bends of his career. There's something that happens to him where the assassination experience of that he has gone through, his father's assassination or his grandmother's assassination, those thoughts occupy his most important speeches when he's supposed to be sort of speaking about larger things, as you mentioned. At the end of the Bharat Jodo Yatra, he just spoke about, how he got the news of his father's death and what kind of trauma he experienced. And I try to speak about it in chapter 1 and later as well. But there is a certain pattern to it, and it is not something that he does consciously. I think he's flooded with a few things. A few things happen to him at that particular moment, and he goes silent for 20 seconds, 25 seconds. In fact, one particular interview in London, he goes silent for 20 seconds. And then when he recovers, and it's a very genuine recovery process. It's not that he's lost for words, or whatever. He just starts thinking, and then he comes back and he says forgiveness. That's all that he says. And then, of course, moves on to other things. But of course, there is the other aspect to it, which is he's not prepared. In fact, I also mention how Indira Gandhi used to be, trained, or how she would do mock press conferences before she went and addressed the press, or sort of, practice her speeches. And we have Sanjeeva here, Shada Prasad, was the man who used to train her, or prepare those questions, or do that kind of an exercise, which I think Rahul Gandhi lacks. I try to be as less judgmental as possible in the book, because that's not my method. But then that is a fact. The fact is that I think there is very little preparation, and it's sometimes it is reason that plays a very important role in the way he speaks, and there's absence of emotion, and sometimes it's only emotion. I think there has to be a balance somewhere.
No, but can I just there's a spontaneity about him, Now that that spontaneity comes sometimes, and emotes, and he catches the aura of that meeting. I mean, for instance, those interviews and those things he did at Oslo, and then at the university in Paris. I think that was something which caught the imagination of that audience. So I mean, you're right, but training. I mean, Modi is trained, so over the years. So I don't know. Anyway,
he's a remarkable speaker. Modi is a remarkable
yeah,
speaker. In fact,
but the teleprompter goes, then he stops.
no, it's not that.
Anyway, yeah, go ahead.
मेरा सवाल चौहान साहब से है कि the fight between Rahul Gandhi and Modi, basically the fight between two advisors of Rahul Gandhi and Modi. Are you agree?
I think not. It's not fair. I think it's not fair. Every leader has a set of advisors and all that. So it can't be a battle between the two sets of advisors. No? I mean, as previous question asked, he needs to be trained. I mean, which means advisors have to train him to how to speak and all that. So I mean, there's nothing wrong with seeking advice of good advisors or experts and all that. I hope only Mr. Modi takes advice of good advisors and not just few cronies.
Yes, Sugata, it's unfair of me to ask you a question now not without reading the book. But generally what I feel is, do you think Rahul Gandhi has been sort of fated or put in a position where he is forced to take upon the burden of leadership? If there had been a galaxy of leaders in the Congress who would have shared things with him with equal, like it happened with Nehru during the freedom movement, that there were a lot of people and there was a certain balance, Here in Congress, everything falls on him, and if he fails, everything fails, and that is the thing. Do you feel that inevitability is there?
Yeah, I mean,
It's a fateful thing.
no, and there is a suggestion that I make in the book. This is also a suggestion that is not just there because I want it to be that way. But even during the Bharat Jodo Yatra, it was largely indicated that he's the moral compass of the party. So I write in the book that it would probably be better that he sort of becomes the custodian of the values of the Congress party, because he has a very, very difficult relationship with power. I list a lot of instances where, the power is poison movement is just one thing that we know. But there are several other smaller things which I speak about, where he has a kind of ambivalent relationship with power. That's a very, it's quite natural for him to sort of look at power that way, because he has seen what power did to a lot of people he loved, and he does not put his own ancestors to scrutiny. It's always. He has never spoken about the problems in the leadership of, say, Mrs. Indira Gandhi, or the mistakes that his father made. They are the loved ones, right? So it's a very difficult relationship with power for him. And I write, there's an entire chapter called Power and Abdication. So there is this constant thing about abdication in him, which comes up. And I think, the thing is that he should openly declare that he will never be the Prime Minister of India, but be a kind of moral compass of the party. And also, you mentioned the independence times and all that. See, there Gandhi was never contested for an executive role, but he gave a large cultural air cover to the party under which Nehru and Azad and Patel and others thrived. Yeah, so they were the nuts and bolts people trying to do things with the people and handle power. But he does not have that luxury. So, and that is also the making of the Congress party, because after the 60s, after the 70s, it became a party, I think, of one person, and it chased power. And he is also very, very radical in that sense, because he's trying to do something which his own ancestors did not do. He is sort of, he's a very radical. He has very radical ideas about how to, rebuild the party, and is trying to give it a kind of idea and shape. It's a very, very difficult thing, because that party is a mass party. It's not a ideologically oriented thing, and ideologies are also frozen in time and are intransigent, which I don't think will help the party. So it's a kind of devil in the deep sea kind of situation.
Thank you very much. My name is Sagar. My question is that why we are bent upon, national parties like Congress, BJP. Do they make a leader? No. The leader is made by himself. So let us wait for another leader to come up. And have you ever tried in your book writing about the mind of the people, because this India is 1.4 billion people, and they have a different mind. They have a different regional chief ministers.
fine.
So how have you
There's
phrased
a very interesting
that?
question, because
Yeah,
I
thank
do
you.
address that thing in the book. I really hope you buy the book and read it, because I do address that issue, because I speak about something that was suggested in 2000 by the Justice Venkatachalaya Commission. So Justice Venkatachalaya makes a very simple suggestion, and he is famously the judge who refused to change the constitution, as you know. He says we should have a government which is a 50+1 government. So I basically take that argument and extend it and say India should be a permanent coalition, because it's such a diverse country, and no political party or political leader, including Nehru or Rajiv Gandhi, is able to get 50% vote share right from 1952. So it is, no, we have to sort of think of that, otherwise we will always be cribbing about exclusion. Mr. Modi's vote percentage, it's around 33%, 32, 33%. The first term it was even 31, and now I think it's about 37%. So and then the UPA 2 was just about 22% or something. No, that's the earlier thing. So now it's 19% of the Congress. The Congress's latest thing, 2019, was 19%. It's gone under 20%. But between 1982 and 2019, it was the bump. You saw a little bit of bump only in 2009 when they got 200 seats. So, I mean, if you are trying to solve the problem of this country, if you are trying to keep the diverse demography of this country together, then I suggest that it should be a permanent coalition. So where you sort of you're constantly negotiating, what happens in this country, rather than, do this majoritarian thing. So there is a bit of solution in there.
There's a question there. Sahu, you wanted a question? Give him the mic.
Yeah, actually this is a point to which I wanted to draw attention of the top Congress leaders. See, for instance, I wrote an article, how issues raised during Dandi March and Bharat Jodo Yatra, they actually are striking resemblances. But none of the leaders of the Congress, including Rahul Gandhi, they flagged those points. See, for instance, Gandhi, before Dandi March, he wrote a letter to Viceroy saying that you are all the time flagging communal issues, not the common issues of the people. Gandhi said that Dandi March is a tapasya for him. Here Rahul Gandhi exactly the same thing. Gandhi, in his letter to Viceroy Lord Irwin, he flags the inequalities. Every per day income of an average Indian, per day income of a British citizen, and so on and so forth. So I was wondering why such remarkable aspects of the history are not flagged by any of the Congress leaders.
Okay. Yeah. We'll take that question together. Yeah. Give the mic, please. I think that will be the last.
What I would like to say was, when we speak of comparative statements of so many percentage of votes, we should know how much of the votes are real and how much have been engineered. Don't forget that. And that nothing will be solved unless we solve the EBS problem. And that we have to really be realistic about all this when we speak of the coming issues.
Yeah, Mr. Sahu just asked the question. I think, I write an entire chapter on the Bharat Jodo Yatra. See, there is no unity of mission, when he is sort of walking across. He's speaking one thing when he starts out in Kanyakumari. By the time it crosses the Vindhyas, it becomes something else. And even the messaging of the Congress party at different stages of the Yatra was very different. They were extremely cautious and sort of looked very reasonable in the south. But the moment they crossed the Vindhyas, it becomes a kind of, there's a I mean, he's sort of called a tapasvi 8 times by the official handle of the Congress party. So he becomes a Shiv Bhakt. And then, I mean, there's a lot of things which probably required, I mean, the earlier point that we made about preparedness, about a kind of unity of mission, a kind of pursuit with a single whatever, that did not happen. It was more a larger, kind of embrace of humanity that happened, rather than a political, something that was happening with a political purpose. No, but then that was a completely different time and completely different context. So if you are trying to be political, you have to there are a set of things that you need to do. And if you're trying to be just cultural, there is another set of things that you need to do. So you have to be clear whether you want this or you want that. No, I don't think it's speculative.
No question.
No, just pick the mic.
I have no question, just a suggestion. You have 311 pages in the book. I think another 2-3 pages, and why I'm saying that I'll tell you. Just a brief on the family background is very important. I'll tell you why. I go for a walk in the morning to the deer park, and it's been habit for a number of years. I see a group of children. Hey, who was the first Prime Minister of India? 20 years ago, I got the right answer. Today what they are answering? Somebody says Dr. Rajendra Prasad. Somebody says Lal Bahadur Shastri. Somebody says Sardar Patel. Jawaharlal Nehru is missing 9th and 10th school children. So, I think we must include something of the background. The children must know. I know it's not a biography. It's a commentary. But since it's not Rahul Gandhi, no harm giving, just a couple of pages on the background also.
But that is a reflection. That is a reflection of what is happening in the country. It's a reflection. But it's a reflection. I mean, one man. There's a thing which is going around. I don't know whether you've got this on your mobiles. This is a quote from Kaushik Basu. I think this has a ring. And it has a ring for us here also. It says, for a nation to progress, this is that the professor of, professor of economics, Cornell University, former chief economic advisor here and to the World Bank. For a nation to progress, it is important for people to spend time on science, mathematics and literature instead of spending time showing that 5,000 years ago, their ancestors did science, mathematics and literature.
Good point.
I mean, anyway, this book is a work, this book is a work in progress. Because Rahul has yet to do what he has to do. So it's a beginning, Sugata, and thank you for that beginning to understand this man, because as Prithviraj said, that he has a long innings to go ahead. And we get to understand what, the burdens and the predicaments of politics and what a man has to go through. And that kind of, the thing which you mentioned, when your father is killed in that way and your grandmother is killed, I mean, that there's a trauma, there's a, what do you call it in terms that post-trauma, that's what happens, So he has to live with it and yet work for the people and the country. Thank you very much. Being a patient audience. Thank you very much. Thank you.
I think it has reached him.
He just wants
I think he's also read it.
He just wants to take a shot.